Okay, let's talk about stances a bit. This isn't gonna explain the basic stuff since I assume you already know that, but I'm gonna have to talk about the more advanced stuff that is not commonly known. So let's just jump straight in and talk about stances. So we'll use Elder as an example. They have the brace for impact stance, which everybody gets, and you get minus 55% of hull damage suffered. So how much does that actually increase our effective hit points? If you answer by 25%, you are wrong, because while you take this damage, 25% of damage, that means that what normally would kill you, or what would normally be 100% damage, would leave you with 25% of damage left over. But then once you get this extra 25% of damage again, you are left with 25% of 25% left, which is gonna be like 6%. And then again, once you get this 6%, you're gonna have another 1% or so of hit point left. So effectively this increases your hit points by 33%, and you can calculate that also as 1, which is your base, or like 100% divided by 0.65, which is the effective damage that you are receiving. And if you plug that into a calculator, you are gonna get 1.33, so you get 33% increase of damage. This is pretty basic stance, you don't really use it often. If your ship is getting focused by a lot of enemies, that's a good idea to do it, but other than that, it's not a very good stance. Or if you have no weapons, like the tyranny video I just posted, you just don't have any weapons, so they don't benefit from other stances, so you might just use brace for impact. Next one is gonna be the reload one, and this is the one that people get wrong the most often. And I don't blame them, because I also thought it worked differently until I actually went and tested this. I made a video where I recorded the firing speed with reload and without reload, and actually counted the frames. And it turns out that the tooltip is basically wrong, because it says that it increases your standard weapon rate of fire by 40%. So how much extra damage are you getting? 40%, obviously, right? Because the tooltip says so. But that is not correct. This is bullshit. What this actually does is it decreases your reload time by 40%, which might sound like the same thing, but is actually completely different. So effectively, you're gonna have your basic rate of fire, which is gonna be counted as 1, and then 40% reload time means that you get 60% of normal reload time. So you divide the 1 by 0.6 and you will get 1.66, so you effectively get plus 66% of damage, which is way more than the usual 40% that this tooltip would suggest. So this stance is actually really amazing. It gives you a ton of damage, plus 66%, which is twice as effective as the brace for impact stance. So if you are using brace for impact and the enemy is using reload, they are getting way more benefits out of it than you, because reload is just way effective rather than brace for impact. Of course, it doesn't work for lances, but the best ships usually for most factions are the ones that are optimized for the DPS, like this Falling Moon battleship, which almost completely rely on the macro weapons. It only has a single lance, but 95% of its DPS comes from the, well, maybe not 95%, more like 85%, because there's still torpedoes, which is like 10%, and 5% in lances. But still, almost all of it comes from the macro, so reload stance boosts that by 66%, which is a ton. so this is not 40%, this is 66%, so this is just really a lot. So then you also have this upgrade for Dark Eldar and for all the Eldar, King Crude batteries, which increase the firing speed of your star cannons by 25% once you give it a while to charge up, and this stacks with the reload stance because you need to be in the reload stance for it to work with the first place. So what will your fire rate be with this upgrade and reload stance? So you might think that you just can add them together, but if you did that, that would mean that you get normally you get 0.6, so you subtract 0.25 from that, and you get 0.35 for that, which would be almost 200% increase in damage. But this is not true. This doesn't work like that. This would be too good to be true, since with such a short reload it would be completely broken. I mean, it is still ridiculously good, but it's not plus 200% like it would be with 1/3 of a reload rate. How it actually works is that you take the normal reload time, which is 0.6 with reload, and then it gets multiplied by another 75%. So the 25% bonus from the King Crude batteries is a multiplier on the base reload bonus, and what you get from that is 0.45. So it's not the 0.35 that you would expect, it's actually 0.45. And once we calculate how much does that actually give us, it's still gonna be a lot, because it is 222% of the damage. So this effectively increases our DPS in this stance by 222% up to, so it's plus 122 compared to the baseline. So this is just it more than doubles your damage. So this is why Eldar just have this disgusting DPS, because this battleship by its own, even without any stances, it has like 44 DPS or something. I have to check. Yeah, I'll check later, but it's something 40 something DPS, and then with reload stance and with the King Crude batteries you add 122% for that to that, so you end up with almost just shy of 100 DPS from a single ship, and you can take 3 of those, so you're pulling over 300 DPS with your whole fleet if you just stack all of those together. And then you can stack the Blessing of Vol for armor piercing for that on top of it, and this is just completely crazy damage that you can deal if you find some isolated enemies. You can just delete them instantly almost. So reload stance is probably the best almost always. Like it just does everything. It gives you a ton of DPS, it gives you extra mobility by increasing your rate of maneuver skills or combustion gauge or whatever you use for movement. So you're also more mobile, you can run away faster, you can chase enemies faster. So this stance is just absolutely amazing, and you should use this most of the time. And then you have those other stances like tracking sense, which is completely useless for everybody, never use that, just forget it exists. And then we have of course the lock-on, which is kinda okay if you have a lance based ship, like you have Apocalypse or you have Gothic. You shouldn't use Gothic because it's terrible, but if you have one for some reason, you should be using the lock-on stance for it. And also if you have macro based ships with short range macros, you will use lock-on to increase the range, but be aware that people often use lock-on because it's supposed to be good for long range, because plus accuracy should be quite a lot, but for normal weapons, if you see, For long range, you get 40% of accuracy. So if you add to that plus 20, this will give you plus 50% of damage, which sounds good on paper. And like, yeah, lock-on is supposed to be good at long range, right? But reload is actually better, because reload gives you plus 66% of damage, which is better than 50% from lock-on. So the only place where lock-on is useful is if you are firing not at long range but at very long range. So you need to have like really long range engagements, and only then lock-on is useful. But at those ranges, most weapons, the macros, will actually miss anyway, because these hit chances are kind of bullshit. So this is just a chance that the shot will be on target. But over such long ranges, faster enemy ships, if they start boosting or something, they will just move out of the way physically, and the shot will not do any damage and miss anyway. So even if you roll a hit on the percentages, you can still avoid the bullet by just moving away slightly faster than base movement speed. So it is still gonna miss. So this stance is just not that great, and you should only use it if your weapon normally doesn't have this range. So if you're at long range like 12k, and you would actually want to use reload for that, because reload is more efficient at this range, but this weapon only has 9k base range. So you want to use lock-on only then when your weapon does not have enough range and you need this extended range for it to hit at all. But if you are in range, like if you're using the Overlord, which has plasma macros, and they have 18k range, and you are fighting at long range, then it's still not worth it to use the lock-on. Then you're better off with reload, even though it's long range, and this is where lock-on is supposed to be good. And if you are at even further range, like very long range, then lock-on might be good. But then again, the chances of, if you are at this extreme range, enemy is not identified yet, and you're still seeing them as blips, so you can fire them anyway. And even with lock-on, like I said, supposedly you have 40% hit chance, but in practice this is much less, and your shots are gonna miss anyway much more than that, just because the travel time of the projectiles is kind of long, and if the enemy is boosting, they can just dodge you. So you're actually better off using reload anyway, because it's pretty much, the accuracy is almost the same. It doesn't matter if you have lock-on or not. If even those shots that are supposedly missing, they can still just scatter a bit forward and hit the enemy ship anyway, because it moved more than they expected it to move. So you're still better off using reload for those long range weapons. And it also gives you faster combustion gauge regeneration, so you can move towards the enemy faster to get to them closer, since you all, or you can run away. If you're kiting, it also lets you get away faster if you don't want to close the range, but it gives you better mobility. By 20% regeneration is actually very significant, so it really does add up to a significant chunk of speed, since the extra movement speed is 300% of normal movement speed. That's up to a lot of speed overall. And this is not really a stance, but I will also mention that there is this burn retros. So if you stop and go into this stance, you actually regenerate combustion gauge at twice the normal rate, because normal rate is just 1 point per second, but if you burn retros and stand still, it will double. So if you are, for example, Imperial Navy, and you're getting kinda close, you just might want to stop and burn retros to stock up your gauge if you used up most of your fuel for closing in to get close faster, to use your armor piercing ammo. And once you close in, you can just stay still for a second to fill up the fuel gauge faster. And if you have reload stance, this double base regeneration rate, again, it becomes more significant, so it gives you a lot of extra fuel, and then you can quickly fill up your tank again, so you have extra fuel for ramming. So if you just want to go for a ram, you can. It's easier to just stop still for a second, quickly fill up the gouge, and then just go for a ram or escape or whatever you want to do. Since just circling enemy at the base speed is not gonna accomplish much, you cannot get away from the enemy like that, and you won't really be able to ram effectively either. So just standing still sometimes is a good idea if you are already in range and you want to be able to use this fuel for something later. This is a good plan. So lock on, yeah, back to lock on. Lock on is not that great. Only use it if you need the extended range. If you want accuracy, don't use it. Or if your ship is only lances, because reload doesn't work for lances and other lance type weapons. If you have those ships that are mostly lance based, then it is okay to use the lock on and basically hope that you get the criticals that you need. But anything that is macro based shouldn't use lock on unless you really need extra range, like this Avenger with light macro. But Overlord, even though it's a long range ship, you are better off with reload almost always, unless it's really the extreme range, very long range. Then lock on is better, but not by much actually, since the listed accuracy is not true at these ranges. And similar at short range, it doesn't matter. Like if you're playing orcs, the orcs have those abysmal accuracy weapons that are really bad. They do a lot of damage, but they have terrible accuracy, and at short range you get plus only 50% accuracy. So you might say, oh, lock on gives me plus 20 to that, which is plus 40%. But again, doesn't matter. Reload is still better, because reload is a whooping plus 66% of damage, which is better than lock on, even in this case that supposedly was made for this lock on to be good, but reload still outperforms it. And again, this is not really true, because it says it has 50% accuracy, but if you are at really close range, like below 2000, like you're almost touching the enemy ship, you're gonna hit every time. It doesn't matter that it says 50% here. The real accuracy is gonna be like 90% at this range, even without the lock-on, because like I said, the 50% is just a chance for a shot to scatter. So yeah, it will scatter to the side, but if you're so close that you're almost touching the enemy, you're still gonna hit, because there is no matter how well, there is a big enough scatter, because sometimes the shots just go completely way off and they just pass above or below the enemy ship. So even if it looks like it should hit straight on, it's gonna pass below or above. But still, the accuracy at this very close range is actually much higher than listed here. So don't use lock on even of those guns that are really bad. Reload is better almost always. Like, reload is very underrated. Like, a lot of people still use it, but they don't realize how good it really is, because it's actually plus 66% of damage, not plus 40%. So it's even better than people give it credit for. It's really the best stance for 90% of situations, and you're gonna be rocking reload 90% of the time or something like that. And do we have any different stances? Yeah, the Necron ones, but I guess I'm gonna just talk about them in the Necron video, since they're Necron specific. And we have also the Eldar stances, which I hope will get fixed. They don't get lock on, they get this runic targeting node, which is kinda good, but again, reload is just really good, like I said. And they do get those King's Root batteries. Before, you could take this Spirit targeting node, which upgraded this stance to be actually useful, but now it was killed, it's useless now, so you're pretty much stuck with reload even with Eldar. So reload is just gonna be used for mostly everything, unless it has lances, then it's lock on. But yeah, that's it. So I hope this was useful. This is kind of unknown stuff. Very few people actually know all this stuff about stances, about the reload and stuff. So I hope this is gonna be some good knowledge that will help you make right decisions when picking the ships for your compositions, and you can make good decisions on the battlefield too on which stance to actually use. See you guys.